Wir haben heute Abend, wie Co. gerade schon vorgerechnet hat, 12 Personen, die aber nur in 10 Beiträgen euch zur Wahl stehen. Und wir beginnen deshalb mit einem Gast, der einen unfassbar weiten Weg auf sich genommen hat. Das ist jetzt kein Witz, der ist wirklich unfassbar weit gereist, um hier bei euch heute Abend auf der Bühne zu stehen. Allerdings tritt er außer Konkurrenz auf.
Und wir sprechen hier nicht von Österreich heute, ja? Ein Gast aus den Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika, bekanntlich ja das Mutterland des Poetry Slam. Chicago ist die Heimatstadt des Poetry Slam und das ist auch seine Heimatstadt. Er hat auch viel mit Mark Kelly Smith zusammengearbeitet, war Teil des legendären Speak Easy Ensembles, war Finalist der National Poetry Slams in den USA und Erfinder der Encyclopedia Show. Ich bitte euch, kräftig in die Hände zu klatschen und unseren Gast aufs Herzlichste zu begrüßen. Hier ist für euch Robbie Telfer!
We don't use stairs in America. Sorry. Hallo. Hi. Entschuldigung, ich spreche Englisch. Nur Englisch. Aber ich liebe Kokosnüssen. Und Eichhörnchen. All right, sorry. I only know the funny words in German. So anyway. Hi, I am very happy to be here with you all. I can't see any of you, so you can text your friends during the show. I won't know. Yeah, woo, texting. I would love to share with you some poems, but before I start, I would love to also know, do they have video games in Germany? They're called like video games. I love video games. They changed my life, but I'm 37 years old, and I had to take a second to remember. And that means that there are 2 periods of my life. The first was gray and sad and stupid, and everyone just hated their lives, and it rained all the time. And then this magic thing happened where your whole life changes, and everything is in color, and you get to make out with a unicorn. And that period of your life where all of a sudden everything has meaning and is beautiful is marked by when you realize that video games exist. Because we didn't know that they existed. They didn't exist before. We were just playing with the hoop and the stick thing that all the kids used to do in the Middle Ages, you know? And so it was a grand awakening. And so I wrote this poem about that day, that special day, where video games existed. This is called the Nintendo Christmas. And Co said I couldn't use the door, but I really want to use the door. Okay. We were not a Nintendo household. We were a play in the dirt pile household, a lose your Legos down the heating vent household, a watch the mice die in the mousetrap household. We did not have nice things, is what I'm saying. Groggy, December 25th, 1989. The Nintendo Christmas. The first few gifts were given from the heart, but were also kind of cheap. Not that I'm ungrateful, but Mom usually did better than my necktie with Bugs Bunny playing basketball on it, or my brother Dan's Choose Your Own Adventure books. The bounty just seemed light, but we were not giving up hope. There was still that last big box just chilling in the corner. Mom knew it was a big deal. It was such a big deal. We didn't think it was possible. We were not a Nintendo household, but when Dan tore the corner of that paper and we saw that official Nintendo seal, it was like Luke the Jedi, not Luke the Apostle to Jesus Christ, had shot the space missiles into the exhaust pipe in the Death Star of our sadness. What's the Death Star auf Deutsch? Yes. And it was like the sadness blew up because of Luke. And it was like, I mean, we freaked the fuck out. We had to like thank mom appropriately, but also move as quickly as possible into the TV room to set up our shining plastic Jesus. I mean, it had a plumber and Goombas, whatever the fuck those are, and it had turtles, but the turtles were called Koopas, and it had a gun! A gun you could shoot at the TV, and the TV wouldn't shut off forever like Dad used to do with this real gun before he left us. I'm just kidding, that didn't happen. He's very nice, he didn't have a gun. But you could shoot clay pigeons or ducks, and if you missed, your asshole dog would laugh at you, and it was great. Pew pew! I mean, our whole world changed permanently. We became indoor kids. Any color left clinging to our pasty white bodies just ran away forever. It was like we were taught to read overnight. No, it was like we were reading, and then Willy Wonka kicked down the door to our classroom, and he's like, shut up, you teachers. That ain't reading. This is reading. And he gives you a shiny piece of candy that you eat with your eye hole. And then you're like, oh my God, thank you, Willy Wonka. I suddenly understand the complexity of the cosmos. Radical. It's exactly like that. But then we get old. Yeah. Oh, stuff gets real. We learn about how video game executives figure out the most direct route into little kid brains. We learn about all the horribles. They rebuilt the Death Star, you know. Grunstula? Was it the Grunschula? The gray school? The green school? Anyway, that's a really scary name for something like that. But despite that, there are still two golden, irrefutable truths that all the world's cynicism cannot dent. One, video games will always be awesome and getting awesomer and constantly blowing my mind. Two, my mom loves me. And she loves my brother Dan, and we three are able to magically extend our identities out of our skin into a gray plastic rectangle, shining out 8-bit video game wonder. And even if the Nintendo Christmas never happened, we got another Nintendo at our dad's house a few hours later. But even if that Nintendo Christmas had also not happened, we would still be able to reach outside of ourselves, wrap into and around the totems we give each other each year. We would still feel mom's forehead kiss each time we mash the start button. Dankeschön. Thank you. Grunstula. I like Grunstula better. I'm going to take a seat on that. It is so great being here. I am very honored to perform my ridiculous things at you. And so I have another poem I'd like to perform for you that is less silly. It is not as silly. But it's, so my brother is very nice sometimes, and he is a stand-up comedian. He performs comedy. You can look him up on the YouTubes. And for a long time, he got really sick. He had cancer for a while, and he's better now, but the healthcare in the United States is a piece of garbage, and so he had to keep performing his stand-up to pay his medical bills. And that's all he could do to survive. And his doctors would be like, sorry, you don't have good health care. We don't know if you're gonna be okay. So he had to get on stage like this and tell jokes about TV, and stupid movie stars and get people to laugh at him. He had to pay his bills with laughter. And it was just so hard to watch, and no one had a solution. We had to crowdfund his cancer care and ask people to write us checks, and that's finally what worked. So I wrote this poem, and I wrote it thinking about him and the other comedians in my life, the people who are funny, but also people. So this is for my brother. This is called Clowns, and I really appreciate you listening to my stuff. There's a dark club full of hyenas barking at an empty stage. Jon Lovitz replaced Phil Hartman on the TV show News Radio after one night when Andy Dick fed cocaine to Phil Hartman's recently clean wife, Bryn Hartman. You see, Phil Hartman had told Bryn Hartman, his wife, that if she started using cocaine again, he would leave her. So Bryn Hartman shot Phil Hartman and herself in the head. Years later, Andy Dick was taunting Jon Lovitz about how Andy Dick caused the untimely death of Phil Hartman. So Jon Lovitz grabbed Andy Dick by the head and bounced his face off a comedy club bar. David Foster Wallace wrote a very simple and easy to understand book called Finite Jest. Richard Pryor burns, Gilda Radner smolders, Andy Kaufman writhes on the ground with women. Bill Hicks never gained mainstream popularity because he couldn't tell more dick jokes than jokes about our first Iraq war. Perpetually censored, he was diagnosed with cancer. He taped a set on the David Letterman show. He told more jokes about abortion than the Battle of the Sexes. So David Letterman pulled the segment from the show before it aired, and his friend Bill Hicks died a few weeks later. At Kermit the Frog's memorial service, Miss Piggy had to run away from the podium at the end of his eulogy. Scooter, the Muppet, had to remind the congregation how we should all live in the moment, like Kermit did. And then Scooter died of AIDS just 2 years later. Big Bird came out to sing "It's Not Easy Being Green," and for a moment, it sounded like there was a real human being inside of this giant yellow body. For a moment, it sounded like this impossible, real person was beginning to crack and cry in this now trembling, feathered body, all because a frog didn't want to bother people by going to the hospital in time. Later, the ashes of some guy named Jim Henson were scattered on a ranch in Santa Fe. From the stage, you can't see the hyenas, but you can hear them barking. Your job is to be meat dangling, to tease out the barking. Your job, clown, is to be meat dangling. Dance for the canine scream. That means that you're winning. You're a failure if they think they can hear a real human being shivering and crying inside your giant clown body. There's a 2-drink minimum. Tip your waitress. You'll be here all night. You say you'll be here all night. Sucking out the cackles, daring death to just try and take you. And that's the joke, you know. Leben ist ein wunderbarer Witz. When Tina Fey was 5 years old, she was playing in her front lawn, and a man with a knife walked up to her and just slashed her across the face. When Stephen Colbert was 10, his father and 2 oldest brothers died in a plane crash on September 11th, 1974. Mark Twain tried to swallow an entire planet's imperialistic, selfish greed and stuff it inside a funny white suit. Then the daughter of Samuel Clemens died. Mark Twain kept working, but Samuel Clemens stopped working. We go on, despite this, in spite of this, in spite, we go on. It really is a wonderful joke, right? It's hilarious. Thanks.
Roxy Telfer aus Chicago, unser Special Guest heute Abend.